So first of all, thank you to Dwayne and the ECF for inviting me along to do this. Antonia has possibly got the best reason for not being able to be with you today, and that is because she got selected to be a parliamentary candidate for the Labour Party in a seat, I think, in the Midlands somewhere. But she sent me her notes, which I've used to inform this. So I've included some of what she wrote into this presentation, and just want to wish her all the best of luck with her election campaign. As for me, I am part of a group of freelancers that work as Campaign Collective. We work together to provide affordable communication support to the not-for-profit sector. I live in Brighton. It's incredibly sunny here and warm today, which is really nice. I've been a parliamentary candidate twice in Brighton for the Labour Party. I also worked in the leader of the Labour Party's office. I was a councillor in Brighton for 5 years and leader of Brighton and Hove City Council, taking us through COVID, which was interesting. So that's a little bit about me and my background. I'm really pleased to be with you today. So I'm going to start to share my slides. We were sent lots of questions in advance. I've tried to weave as many of the answers to those questions into my presentation as I can. If you feel there's anything which we could do with covering a bit more, or anything I've missed out, there's an opportunity to ask questions at the end. So I'm now going to test it out screen sharing, so we know it works. Oh, well, the screen share has disappeared off my screen. Am I still?
It should be there. You're at the bottom bar. If it's the same as on my laptop, then yeah, you've got it.
I think I've got it. I think I got it. Okay. It's been a bit slow. Okay. So everybody can hopefully see that. So that's Campaign Collective. This is me. I'm guessing that the slides can go around to everybody afterwards, Dwayne. If people click on the LinkedIn profile, it'd be great to link up with as many of you as possible on LinkedIn. And I'm always around to up for answering questions or having a discussion about all the things I'm going to talk about, because it's kind of hard to remember it all. And there's a link there to our website at Campaign Collective if you're ever looking for support with campaigns or communications. So this is what we're going to cover today. I've come up with a 10-point plan. I was trying to distill lots of what we're going to talk about into what are the main things I think about when trying to engage with new governments. Big emphasis on the first 100 days, usually with new governments, but we need to talk about what goes beyond that as well. A little bit about something you can be doing between now and then in terms of background checks. Then we'll talk about finding champions and how to cut through to reach them. A little bit on media strategy and building relationships. So that's what we're going to go through. It's going to set my timer so I don't talk for too long. So I want to make sure we've got lots of time left for questions at the end. Okay, so this is my 10-point plan. Others are available. Take from this what you feel will work for your particular campaigns. But these were what I felt were the 10 things I would really want to think about in terms of how I behave as a campaigner, how my team or my organisation behaves. And looking at Antonia's notes, she had a pretty similar list, actually. So I'm fairly confident about this. And we both had as number one, know what you want. And it sounds really obvious, but it's surprising how many people will go into a meeting with a politician and not have time to get to the ask, not have time to articulate really clearly what it is that they want, and go through lots of background information. And I think it's important to have that elevator pitch ready to really be able to hone down exactly what it is you are looking for. And then secondly, to know who has the power to give you what you want. We can talk a little bit about how you find them, but quite often the people who have the power to give you what you want, you can't get to directly. You might have to get through a bit of a zigzag type of route. It might be that there are people around the person with ultimate sign-off who also have quite a lot of power to get your issue in front of them. But that's really key. It's again quite surprising sometimes how many people go and talk to somebody about their campaign. It actually doesn't have much power to help. Thirdly, to think about your red lines and points of compromise. It's fine to keep your big issue, whatever it is. Obviously, you know, everyone's got their end goal that they want to get to. And I know that many people have formed coalitions, which I think is going to be particularly helpful with this government. Lots of organisations have got together, and that will straight away bat off there's something that ministers often used to say to us in the previous Labour government, which is, well, you're asking for this, but a similar organisation is asking for something different. You know, we need you all to get together, agree what you want before you come to us. Now, I think that this sector has done a huge amount of work in that so far, judging by the amount of coalitions that I've been working with and the rest of us at Campaign Collective. But, you know, within each of those, it's still fine to have your red lines and to stick to those things that you don't want to change, but also to keep in your back pocket where you might be prepared to compromise and where something perhaps could be done differently that might make it acceptable to ministers to get the kind of sign-off you need to make progress. Yeah, and that comes down to whether you go all out for a campaign or whether you're happy to have a more step-by-step approach where you make incremental gains. That is a decision for you to make, and you can really only judge that once you've started to build a relationship with the person who has the power to give you what you want. I think it's really important, particularly with a new government, to stay positive and focused. We're going to be having a lot of people coming into government who have never been in government before. A lot of them have been in opposition for a long time. There's a few that were in the previous government, but many of them are new. And they're going to be looking for supporters. They're going to be looking for people to be on their side. And we'll come back to that a little bit later. But it's really important for you to go into meetings or anything with them or any media interviews and be really positive and focused about what you want and not get distracted by the other things that are going on that you might get drawn into. Linked to that is having a very clear and consistent narrative. So really spend time honing those messages down and making sure that's what you're going to be repeating, because that comes into number 6, which is, and this is big for me, and it was also on Antonia's list, a no surprises policy. I would say that is so important with a new government. If you want to get people on your side and you want to be seen as an ally and somebody they can do business with, it's not going to help if surprises come out the bag at them at every media opportunity, at meetings and so on. So you need to control that message. Back in the last change of government, you know, people were not so active on social media. There weren't as many forms of social media. We didn't have things like 38 degrees so much. And there's the potential with all of these things that your message can get diluted or confused, or somebody can make your ask bigger than it's supposed to be, particularly if you're working in a large team where there's lots of different people involved in doing the digital aspects as well as the traditional aspects of campaigning. And you can end up getting surprises if you don't control your message. So that's super important. Then you've got to think about what government want, because at some point you're going to have to align the two. And in particular, listen to their framing. So one example I'd give of this is when I worked in Daycare Trust, which was a childcare charity back in 2002 to 5. You know, we were very focused on the child poverty aspects of childcare and it being good for a way of solving child poverty. Actually, most of the government framing was in economic terms. It's really important to listen to that and think about how you can make the same ask, but with different framing. And we started to frame our ask in terms of how affordable childcare for parents would help the economy. So you're not asking for something different, you're just changing the packaging around it. And position the problem you're trying to fix with your solution. So whenever you go into a meeting, whenever you're talking about it on media, when you're writing documents, always say, this is the problem and we've got a solution. So you're not dumping a problem in the lap of a busy minister. You're saying, we can offer you a solution to go with it. And this is all about building relationships. All of this, good engagement with government, whether it's ministers, the Secretary of State, if you're looking at backbench MPs, peers, civil servants, it's all about relationships. People who build good relationships get more things done. They're more effective. So lots of talk about the first 100 days, but actually you've got to think beyond that. I think this government, they're going in, they want to make change happen. They're slightly cautious. I think all the messaging we're hearing at the moment from Labour ministers, Labour MPs and spokespeople is that it's quite a cautious approach. The constant repeat message is about being fully costed, fully funded. But they're still going to want to make some quick wins. So it's really important to listen out for what they're saying they're going to do within that first 100 days. What are they looking to try and get done? And think about whether or not you're going to be able to help with that. They're going to be looking for supporters and advocates. There's nothing quite like having a third-party endorsement of long-time campaigners on an issue to say the government are getting it right. So, I mean, I'm assuming it's probably going to be a Labour government going by the polling, but, this stands whether it's Labour or a coalition government. They're still going to want people on their side. I think politicians often feel quite bruised and beaten up, so if you want to be their friend, if you want to say, look, we can offer you a policy platform, a speaking opportunity, some background briefings, we've got all the research, can we do you a briefing on this issue, all of that, it's going to be helpful to them. Sorry, somebody's drawing on the screen. I'm not quite sure how that's happening. They're going to be looking for opportunities to make announcements. So if you have got conference coming up, if you're looking at running events, I'll invite them along, and I'll mention how we can get those invitations through to the right people in a minute. But this is a really good way to get really high level engagement, is if you've got a conference or event coming up, is to invite somebody along and offer them the opportunity to make a speech. Just having your backdrop, say you're a child poverty organisation and you want a minister to come along who's trying to tackle child poverty, just by inviting them along, and having your backdrop, that kind of gives a bit of an endorsement. It gives a bit of a halo effect to them, because the sector is saying, you've got something to say on our issue, you're getting this right, and that enhances their message. And don't underestimate the importance of that. So never be afraid to invite them. They can only say no, but sometimes they say yes, and sometimes you go back a second time and they might say yes to something else if they can't do the first opportunity. They will want to consult. We are anticipating a raft of consultations coming out with this new government. They're going to want to use your expertise. You have all got something to say on your campaigns. The thing for you to think about, I think, is how you pick and choose the right things to respond to, because doing consultations is quite time consuming, it's quite resource intensive. So it's a question of choosing the right ones, because as you know, you will get listed in the back of the document. So it's a way of people finding out that you've got that expertise. So it's just something to think about. They're going to set targets. So we think, Antonia and I had some notes about this, we think we're going to see a government with lots of plans and targets, and the money will follow the targets. So Labour has set out its 5 missions. It's being very organised in the way it sets out its policy positions and where it wants to get to, and an idea of the route to get there, and the money will follow those targets. So it's really important to get your heads around where your issue sits within those 5 missions, how you can position yourself within the 5 missions, and to try and work out what kind of funding is going to go into those areas and how it can affect your campaigns. Okay, background checks. This is something you can be doing between now and the election. I know there's not much time, but you can never start this kind of stuff too early or too late, really. You just, it's just something you need to do, is make yourself the experts in your new ministers and to seek out clues as to who they are. So over the last few years, there's been loads and loads of messages coming out. This was one I screen grabbed from Rachel Reeves's Twitter feed. So this goes back to January 2023, and she talks about Carillion, but it gives you a sense of her values and what she stands for. She talks about a government being addicted to outsourcing. So from that, you can see that maybe she's somebody who might be open to insourcing. It gives you a sense of her values and where she's coming from. You need to look at, all the things that people have written who lead on your policy area. find clues as to who they are, do background checks on them, look up where they went to school, where they've lived, what they've said in the past, articles they've written, speeches they've made, really do their homework. Because if you can get that all essential meeting with them and that time in their diary, you want to be able to talk to them as the people that they really are, not just the politician that you see on the media. So you want to know if they have they been a campaigner before, have they worked for an organisation, say like Hope Not Hate, have they worked for a trade union, are they a lawyer, where is their area of expertise? Just get a sense of the real person, and also what they're like personally, make sure you know where their constituency is, because even when people are secretaries of state, they still talk about their constituency and their constituency link, and that is really important to them. So finding your champions. I mean, I always do a mapping exercise whenever I do a piece of work with a client, with an organisation. Always sit down with them and work out where their supporters are, because it's not just going to be about getting to the Secretary of State or the Minister. You want to get close to the people around those people that are your targets. That could be special advisors, could be civil servants, backbench MPs or peers. All of the people in government will have their friends, they'll have their inner circle, they'll have the people they talk to, they confide in, and those are the people that you want to get to. Civil servants often have a bit of time, usually in the summer, probably less so this year, given the timing of the election. But, civil servants, it's quite good to try and talk to them outside of when Parliament is sitting. They've usually got a little bit more time for meetings with voluntary sector organisations. They are the ones that will often be putting the briefs in front of ministers and secretaries of state for sign off. They might be the ones coming up with ideas, informing the discussion. So it's really good to get to know them. They tend to move on every 2 years. So I'm going to give you an idea of where you can find them. Backbench MPs, if you haven't got an issue, you can't get close to the minister, start to find the backbench MPs that are talking about your issue. You don't have to buy into an expensive monitoring system. If you've got the budget for it, great, but you don't have to buy into an expensive monitoring system. You can set up alerts on they work for you. You can go in proactively and do searches on your issue, find out who's been talking about it, find out what they've been saying. Just writing an email to an MP reflecting something they said in their speech last week that is relevant to your issue is often enough to elicit a response. Backbench MPs also good for support setting up all party groups so that you've got a focus for discussion on your issue. And don't forget the peers. Peers often complain that they get left out of all these discussions, and a lot of them have got a lot of background experience. They've got a lot of ways in that can be really helpful. And just focus on developing a small group of champions. My pet hate is people that say, how do we get a list of all MPs so we can email everybody? It's a complete waste of time. It's a scattergun approach. You cannot build good, strong, effective relationships with 650 MPs. You've got to narrow it down. So start looking at what all party groups they join, what EDMs they sign. Really start to make yourself an expert on the people that you think might be your champion, and start to hone it down to a small group that consistently are talking about your issue. I did this for Fuel Poverty Action recently. So that's a tiny charity on a shoestring budget. We got 30 MPs to one of their events. Now, Clive Lewis's assistant said it's the most she'd ever seen at that kind of event. So it's just a kind of standard, let's book a room, we'll have a banner stand, we'll have something to sign up to, we'll get a photo, 30 MPs. And that was in targeting and the follow-up, okay? Targeting people, sending a personal email to this group of people saying, I noticed you spoke on this issue in Parliament and said X, Y, Z, or I notice you're the chair of whatever it is or party group on fuel poverty. Give them a reason to attend and keep it to a very, very brief, 2 or 3 lines. Head it up invitation in capital letters, and then do the follow-up the week before to say, I haven't heard from you. Are you able to come? Just remind them, leave a message on their answer phone or something. Pays dividends. So I've covered my first bullet point really. So yeah, keep it brief. I lost track, you know, when I worked in Jeremy Corbyn's office when he was the leader of the Labour Party. I lost track of how many people used to just send these great lengthy emails with so much policy detail on there. And I didn't have the time to spend looking at you know, all of this detail, trying to work out what it was they wanted. When Jeremy came to office, well, let me talk about Stella Creasy. When Stella Creasy got elected, I remember her saying to me, she got 2,000 emails on her first day. Okay. Jeremy got, I think he had 10,000 in his inbox or something. I think I started about in his office about a month after he became leader. They had a team of about 6 people simply trying to file the emails into relevant folders under subject headings. So, you know, it's really, you know, and it's going to be the same for any new backbenchers. It's going to take a couple of weeks before they get their office and their team set up, at least. So just imagine what it's going to be like to be on the receiving end of this wall of emails, invitations, requests, people wanting help from them in their constituency, people wanting to come along to something. So you've got to keep it really top line. I cannot emphasize that enough. Mentioned reflecting a comment or a speech, that goes down well because it shows you've done your homework. It shows you're really interested. You're not just saying, hey, we're inviting all MPs to this, come if you want, don't bother if you don't fancy it. You're giving them a reason to come. You're saying you're important to us and we want to be important to you. To get to ministers, don't write to their constituency office. That might be really obvious, but I want to say it anyway. Don't write to their constituency office and don't use their parliamentary email address. I'm going to show you the civil service yearbook in the end. Write to the secretary in their office that deals with invitations, and you will get a reply from them. They're very efficient. So if you wanted to invite a minister to your conference in September, get this civil service yearbook. It costs about £150 a year to get it online, so you always get the latest information. It's honestly the best 150 quid you'll spend if you're going to be doing this quite a lot. But yeah, they all have their diary secretaries and they deal with stuff really efficiently and they're used to doing it. So that's the route for those people. Think about creating the speaking opportunities and platforms, giving them a reason to attend. Do invite them. If they say no once, it doesn't mean never. Really important to remember that rule. Keep going. Be creative. Think visually. Think craftivism style. I don't know if any of you have come across craftivism, but some of the books that Sarah Corbett's written, really excellent books, but good for creative ideas, things you can do which can cut through, and hard copy still works. So I want to give a shout out to Postbug. You know, in this day of email, it's quite nice to get something a bit different or something a bit visual. We used to open sacks and sacks of mail that used to come into Jeremy, and people would send some quite creative things. And they were things we'd pick out and say, hey, look at this, you know. So it's worth doing things a little bit differently sometimes, getting a bit creative. I'm going to leave that to you to decide what works. Postbug, as far as hard copy goes, in the days before digital, we wanted to get more children's centres, and we were chatting to Treasury civil servants and saying to them, this is what we want. They said, well, it's really hard to spend this kind of money because will the public think it's legitimate to put billions of pounds into childcare? They wanted to test the water. They wanted to see whether people could be galvanized into action to ask for what it was that was needed. So they tasked us with helping them to get that legitimacy. So what we did was we ran a big postcard campaign. We went to various party conferences and loads of places where we handed them out. We built a network of people that would hand out these postcards. And the Treasury would phone us up and say, right, we've got 200 in, now it's up to 400, now it's up to 1,000. And we just kept going and they kept reporting back to us on how many they're receiving. But what it did was give them the legitimacy when it came to budget time for Gordon Brown to stand up and say, we know this is what people want. I've been contacted by thousands of people in this great postcard campaign by Daycare Trust. People need more children's centres, so that's where I'm going to put the money. And he made big announcements. we went out and welcomed it and called him the childcare champion. We got front page headlines. We were a team of 70. Okay, we weren't a great big charity. We were a small team. So this kind of thing really works. This is the civil service yearbook. We can get you the link to it. So it's about £150. You get all the ministerial departments, non-ministerial departments, you get all of the quangos, now called executive agencies. You also get Scotland, Northern Ireland, Wales, you get all of the assemblies. And within that, you can go in, you can see who the special advisors are, you can see who the diary secretaries are or the address to send invitations and so on to. It's really worth it. It will save you hours of Googling or asking people, and it's updated all the time. So if you buy the online version, you haven't got to keep buying it again. So big recommendation for that. Okay, I thought it's probably worth touching on media strategy just a little bit, because we're all still doing lots of media work. It is a good way to get noticed. It's a gateway to high level influencing. If you can't get attention directly from MPs or ministers, see if you can get some attention from the media, because they will start to notice you. If you're getting an op-ed in the Guardian, a comment history piece, if you're getting onto the radio, onto the TV, they will start to notice you. So it enables you to punch above your weight. And I think this is particularly important for smaller organisations. The media are always on the lookout for expert spokespeople. Class yourselves as experts. They like to have experts. So say that's what you are on your issue, because you will be. You have got the background, you've got the knowledge, you've been campaigning on stuff for years, and comment, just whatever it is, just keep putting the messages out there, because journalists will start to notice that you've always got something to say. You've got opinions to express, you've got knowledge that you can share with them, and that's valuable. Always be available. I once got invited to do an interview on Radio 5 Live at midnight. They came and picked me up in the car to take me to the studio, because in those days they weren't quite so keen on doing down the line interviews. I went and did the interview at midnight, and I knew that they were at that time in the same building as what was then News 24. So I went up to them and said, hey, do you fancy doing a piece on News 24 as well? And they actually got their makeup lady out for me so I could go on the telly, because I was only dressed for radio. So that was quite good. But they said yes. I didn't think they would, and I didn't think I'd have the courage to do it, but I did. I asked whether I could go on News 24, and they took me on there, because they said, well, it's rolling news. We don't always have enough news. Come on there. I did a quick interview with Joanna Gosling, so I ended up getting 2 pieces of coverage that day. So always be available. If you're available, they will use you. And if they know that you're going to be available, they're more likely to come to you first. And that is the positioning you want. You want to position yourselves as the experts, the people with something to say on your issue, and ministers will start to notice. Do a Mick Lynch, always remain entirely reasonable, however much you're challenged, and you will get difficult interviews, particularly if what you want to do costs money. Be relatable to the public, use everyday language, you know all this stuff already, maintain your narrative, and just repeat until you hear ministers saying it back to you. I'm going to speed up a bit, sorry, because I realised how long I've taken. So yeah, we talked a bit about building relationships already. Be a critical friend. That is the positioning. I know that you'll have probably heard that before, but that is where you want to be. You don't want to be out there criticising, saying it's not enough. You want to be out there saying, this is really good, but we'd like to see more, or whatever it is. No surprises policy is absolutely key. Have that agreement internally that you're going to share things with ministers, with government departments before you go out launching things and saying, something different from what the government are doing. Be useful, open up opportunities, acknowledge that you've got shared values and aims. Make yourself sound like you are part of what is being done here. Persuade first and find interesting ways to influence. So, like I said, try and get a bit creative, and then apply pressure at key points. So just escalate carefully. You never want to go in the room shouting, that, but it's really essential, particularly in the new days of a government, to keep that relationship going, really start to build that relationship quite carefully, be more cautious about what you're going to say. They could be in government, for 2 terms at least. Could be the next 10 years you want to be building these relationships with people for. So what you don't want to do is fall out in the early days. And if they ask you to join in with consultations, with meetings, grab it with both hands, get in there, get in the room, get a seat at the table, because that's where you want to be. Okay, thank you. I'm sorry I went a little bit over, Dwayne, and I'm not sure what happened to somebody drawing on the screen, but there you go.
Yes, the drawing on the screen was a new one for me as well, but well, we'll look into that. But thank you. That was actually fabulous. And there's lots of experienced, talented people on the list here who have also been a few commenting on the chat about how really useful some of this stuff is. So there's a few questions here. I'm going to sort of pull up while people are thinking of their questions, and we can also go into discussion as well. So, so one question is, much of the first 100 days, this is from Fiona Deere, much of the first 100 days will be summer and conference recess. So does the first 100 days actually last longer in this case?
Interesting one. I mean, they are going to be working in that first 100 days. They might be in recess, but they're going to be doing things. They're going to be going around the media studios. They're going to be lining up their policy, I think. It could last longer. I kind of find that the first 100 days a slightly artificial thing, but I think what you're looking out for really is what are the quick wins that they're looking for at the moment.
Okay, great. And a second one, sort of from Laura Willoughby, who's I think sort of is also a very experienced campaigner from my interactions with her before. Hello, Laura. Will there be a reshuffle of junior ministerial after the election? Also, I invites the shadow. Sort of looks like there's been a bit of a typo here. So I guess the main question is, will there be a reshuffle of junior ministerial after the election, do you think, of Labour?
My guess is they will avoid doing that. They've got people already in those positions for a reason, and they've been doing those jobs for quite a long time. Unless something goes wrong, which always has the potential to do in politics, I suspect that those teams will pretty much stay as they are. I think who becomes their parliamentary private secretaries and so on. So the PPS role is always one to watch, because they're quite often moving into ministerial. I can't get used to not saying shadow. They're the ones that are going to be moving into ministerial positions possibly in the future. So I'd be starting to keep an eye on who's becoming a chair of a select committee, who is taking on an APG, who's becoming a PPS, and looking up for who's sort of lining themselves up. But I'm not expecting to see much movement amongst that senior team at this stage.
Great. Okay, another question from Martin Lote. Martin is actually the sort of co-founder of Postbug, and actually ran the Equal Civil Partnerships campaign, which had a success with the last government.
Excellent.
So will there be the planned parliamentary sort of summer recess as usual, or will the new government want to be seen to make early progress? Sort of this will impact the first 100 days.
Yeah, I mean, there will be the parliamentary recess will stay as it is, as will the timing of the party conferences. I suspect that people who are going to be ministers and secretaries of state will be working through. I mean, just bear in mind that for the last year, the shadow team would have been working quite closely with civil servants anyway on what the planned policy programme is, and what legislation they want. I should think they've probably got a lot of that lined up to go.
Great. Okay. Harry Ridgewell asks, any tips for finding the right person who has the power to give you what you want?
Yeah, I think, Harry, you just got to do a bit of detective work there. I think if you can really define quite clearly what it is that you want, does it require a change in legislation, a new piece of legislation, a change in existing legislation? It really depends what it is that you want to do before I can give you much advice on that, I think. Is it a policy change? If you were looking for the childcare minister to publish a new policy or a green paper on childcare, it's getting to that person that is what you want to do. It's the route to get to that person, and I would say that will probably be through civil servants, special advisors, looking at what they've got planned.
Okay, great. Now, Andrew, I see you're back. Sort of, Andrew, did you wish
Yeah,
to
hello.
comment anything else about any other points or supportive points, because you have experience with the New Zealand election and when Jacinta Ardern took over from the Conservative government there?
Yeah, I mean, I thought that was really great, and thank you so much. I guess there's a bit of a something that we really struggled with was around how we communicate the change of government to our supporters. In that, so in New Zealand, we'd had sort of 10 years of Tory rule, and that had kind of quite unexpectedly come to an end. And so there's a bit of a dance around, obviously, people want to feel good, they want to feel like excited that the Tories are no longer in power. And so like our campaigns needed to feel like part of the kind of new national story, part of the kind of the new political moment. And then there's always that moment where I guess to that point about asking for what you want, like being really clear about what you want and your red lines, and like to what degree just being very conscious about when the government is a goodie and when it becomes a baddie, to use very oversimplistic language. So like at what point do you stop celebrating the newcomers and start calling them out? And how do you message that to your supporters, because you don't want them to feel disempowered. You don't want them to feel like, well, hold on, you've been saying the government is the problem for the last X many years. Now there's a new government. They want them to feel that they're part of the solution, but just being really clear about how you communicate when they stop being part of the solution. And that is a really, like Jacinda Ardern's honeymoon period actually lasted quite a long time until COVID. I don't know if Keir Starmer's will last quite as long. So that doing that dance with your supporters is a really just needs a lot of sort of conscious effort, basically.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? I mean, it's always a judgment call at what point you escalate. I guess it's when they start going in the opposite direction, or when they make a really clear statement that they're just not going to do what you want. So if, for example, I don't know, take something like energy efficiency, climate change, fuel poverty, that kind of thing. If they are taking steps along the way, you've got to keep celebrating and encouraging and get your supporters to go, yeah, that was great, but we need more. I mean, Dawn Primarolo, when she worked in the Treasury, we used to go and see her to talk about more money for childcare, and she would say, look, I give you the carpet and you come back for my curtains too. But they weren't hostile towards us. I think if you get to the point where you're actually going to start calling out ministers and things because you feel people have lied to you, or they're going in the opposite direction, or they're sort of blatantly doing something that is completely wrong, that's the point. And you can still give them the heads up you're going to do. You say, right, fine, you've made that announcement, there's no way we can come out and support it, it's going in the wrong direction. So if you take something, like I guess the 2-child benefit cap would probably be quite a good example of this. But I would still try and have that first conversation, which is, look, what is it you need us to do? How can we help to get this going back in the direction we need it to go? Because going back to one of the earlier slides, I didn't say lots about shared values and aims, but I think at the root of this is whether you really feel they are sharing your values, they're just struggling to get where you want to be, or whether actually they don't care and they're going in the wrong direction and they're going to go ahead and steam ahead, whatever. And I think that's the discussion. I think my biggest bit of advice would probably be to sit down with whoever's in your organisation and really to thrash out the pros and cons before letting a spokesperson on the loose to go and give them a hammering on the media.
Great. Okay. So we have a question here from Ross and also from Carr. They're both related. Ross wants to ask about sort of investing. Is it worth investing in exhibition space at party conferences? And Kat, sorry. And also Kat added that, is it even worth attending party conferences in general, especially for a very small charity?
Yeah, I mean, God, I go through this every single year. Trying to work out with people I work with whether it's worth their while or not. I have found with some organisations it has really helped to have a presence. So when we were building our postcard campaign at Daycare Trust, we got ourselves a nice corner stand, and it's expensive, but we felt it was worth it because they were the people who had the power to give us what we want. So we wanted to be there right in their face where they were. We also had a fringe, so we kind of went all out on that one. I think it's worth bearing in mind that, you know, your justification under the Lobbying Act is that they are the party of government. So I wouldn't, if Labour get this massive majority that's being talked about, I wouldn't invest in a stand at the Conservatives or the Lib Dems, and I would justify only being at Labour on the basis of them being the party in government. It is expensive, but they, you know, you do get ministers going round to stand still. They'll get their photo taken, so you can use, if they have their photo taken with you, you can use that as an endorsement. There are opportunities to go to fringe meetings and ask questions, but it kind of goes back to that repeat, like how you get yourself noticed. If you're standing up all the time and asking a question, Keith Hill, who was my MP when I lived in Streatham, was housing minister. He ended up inviting all the housing campaigners to come and have a drink with him at the end of conference, because he went to they were at every single fringe meeting he went to asking the same questions. And in the end, he said, why don't we all go and have a drink and a proper chat at the end of the conference? And they built a relationship with him by doing that. So what I usually do is I work out all the possible ways I can engage in a party conference, cost them all out, and then work out which is the most affordable to do, and just work out the most cost-effective option for getting a presence. But, you know, if there's time to get to Labour this year and they end up in government, then I would be inclined to be there.
Great. Okay. And Chloe Hardy from Sheila McGutney Foundation, very well-known organization, and Chloe sort of various experience herself. So similar to Ross, sort of in terms of party conferences, would you go for a party conference, or would you go for an event at Westminster?
That's a really good question. If you've got a limited budget and you want the full attention on your organisation, you might be better off with the proper event in Westminster, because then the ministers are not going to be distracted by everything else that's going on. It can be quite hard to get attention, and I suspect it's going to be quite busy this year at Labour. If you were to book a room at Westminster and invite the minister, you might well get them there if they're interested in your issue. So you do get the focus on you. If you can't get a minister, you can still get MPs that are interested in your topic that perhaps might be too busy to come to a fringe meeting you have. So I think if I was to make a really clear judgment, I'd probably go for a proper event in Westminster.
Great. Okay. And then Martin Clark.
Early though, they're getting booked up over 6 months in advance now.
Okay, that's
parliamentary rooms.
Okay, that's also good advice, to sort of advanced planning. So Martin Clark, also super experienced campaigner, tend to agree with your critical friend positioning, but there's a tension between keeping a civic, sort of a civi-social sort of common voice. There's some expectation of fracturing between the insiders and outsiders. What do you think this can be a positive, or how to prepare? Can the insider outsider be a positive, and how do you prepare for that?
I mean, at this stage, we always want to be trying to be on the insider track. I mean, Antonia had a bit about this, and I think it goes back to how long this government might exist for. You know, once you're on the outside, it's quite hard to get back to being an insider, I would say. I'm just trying to think about what else you said about how to prepare for it. It's really hard without knowing what the issue is and what the route to change might be. And I think it kind of goes back to whatever your theory of change is, like how you are going to get from where you are now to where you want to be. You know, if you're, I don't know, it's a really difficult one to answer. I mean, I've managed to be in organisations where you permanently stay as a critical friend for quite a long time, and that's a really fantastic position to be in. If you look at some people's comments already about Labour and their policy before they get into government, they've already positioned themselves as outsiders. That might be fine if you've got the power to do that, and you've got the resources and the size of movement behind you. I'm guessing that a lot of organisations within this call might be smaller charities, and really, you know, if you end up being on the outside position, you could just get lost.
Okay, so Julia Christian has asked, would love Nancy's thoughts on the power of working in coalitions versus the challenge of creating one common voice when there's lots of compelling organizational priorities.
Well, you know, this is an interesting one. In the previous Labour government, one of the biggest criticisms that we had was that we would all be going to ministers asking for different things, and why couldn't we come and all ask for the same thing, and why couldn't we agree it between ourselves, because they couldn't please all of us all the time. And that was said quite a lot. I've been really impressed with the level of organisation that has gone into creating some of the coalitions that are now in existence. So I've seen the Childcare Coalition, you know, these are huge coalitions. The Childcare Coalition, the End Fuel Poverty Coalition that we coordinate. I coordinate a coalition of called Politics for Many, of trade union organisations that want to campaign for electoral reform. If you're going with one common voice and one common ask, it's much harder to resist. And actually, going back to Martin's question about the inside or outside, you know, staying as one stops you being split apart. Like, staying as this united voice is much harder for ministers to resist than it is if organisations start to fracture. And I think the WASPy women found this. I did a bit of work with the WASPy women, and it was one coordinated voice, and they started to fracture into different groups. And I think the risk then is that you can get picked off, that your asks don't get listened to. It does mean sometimes you have to compromise more, sometimes your asks are more watered down, but I think that's a battle you do before you get in the minister's office. You know, if they offer you gold on a plate, which gives you every single ask for your organisation, I think then you're in a challenging position about whether that is your time to fracture off and say, this is going to do what we want it to do, but it's not going to do what everybody else wants. That's a judgment call at the time, I think. But at the moment, I'd say stick with coalitions. They're powerful.
Super. So we're approaching the end. I want to see if anyone else wants to sort of put up their hand and ask a question rather than me reading your question. So if you want, you can just use the raise your hand, or you can just unmute yourself and see if you want to ask it. And then we also have Roland, who's sort of been making notes of this. It'd be interesting to see that, and he'll publish it afterwards. But any other questions that people have right now that they sort of want to have answered? I'm sure there's plenty you have. So Nancy, oh, Chloe, yes, Chloe, go ahead, please. We can't hear you, Chloe, if you're talking.
I'm really sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Yeah. So I was thinking, just especially for smaller organisations, it takes quite a lot of resource to sort of gather your intelligence and do your research. So be interested in Nancy's thoughts on what's the balance between spending time after the election, understanding the new intake, and just acting and getting stuff out there.
It depends what you want to do. If you want to inform their policy position, and you're quite clear that you've got a minister already for your policy position that is going to be interested in it, that there's no harm in you getting in touch and saying, you know, can we have a meeting? We've got something to offer. I think the difficulty is going to be they're probably going to be so busy in the early days that I would go for trying to offer a speaking opportunity or something that goes with that. I mean, the homework issue, I think, is if you're starting from scratch and you don't know who your stakeholders are and you're trying to find some champions. But I don't know, were you thinking of any particular policy area?
No, not that's one of our challenges, is that we don't have a particular issue, but we want to build relationships and conversations. So yeah, it's a whole conversation, not for now.
Yeah, and you know, but you know, there's no harm, by the way, in writing and welcoming people to their new role. But I would do it a bit creatively. I'd perhaps send a nice big card or flowers, or just do something that's a little bit different in order to say welcome to your new role, blah blah blah. It'd be great to catch up at some point.
Good
I mean, I think you're more of an umbrella organisation. You know, they will be wanting to get in touch. I would think. And it's just really, I mean, there's nothing to stop you just dropping a line to them to their office and saying, you know, here we are, this is what we do, we just want to introduce ourselves. You know, you can't really lose by doing that.
No, exactly. Thank you.
Good. And then Kat Barron, you have a question.
Hi, thanks, Nancy. This has all been great. I thought it was a really interesting perspective about like the insider outsider point that you just answered on a previous question. And I guess as a follow-up, like how do you suggest balancing that and kind of playing maybe more of an insider game with not either overly compromising on your values or asks? And maybe as a bit of context, so like I work in the refugees sector, where maybe a lot of the policies actually aren't that great. So there's only so much of that kind of, yay, this is great, but you can do. And also like, you know, without also disappointing the audience and the supporters of the charity, who are obviously also really important, and, you know, yeah, your values. So how do you suggest balancing those?
Yeah, first of all, I think the work that refugee organisations do is absolutely brilliant. We're a city of sanctuary here in Brighton. I'm really proud of that. You know, this is where I think the shared values come in. I would want to be trying to sit down with that minister or people close to them and say, look, where do they really want to be? Is the place that is what they're talking about really where they want to be? You know, I do wonder sometimes if more hardline comments are coming out, because during an election time we are seeing politicians being sort of buffeted in terms of their normal political alliances. So, you know, there'll be accusations, I think, and particularly around your kind of work, that some of the rhetoric is too right wing and not where the values of people on the left are, who are the natural supporters. And I think I'd want to be having some behind the scenes conversations about really where their sympathies and share values lie, and do they need some help generating that public support for refugees and asylum seekers in a way that the mainstream media are simply not doing at the moment, and how you can help them to sort of combat that rhetoric in order to give them the space to have a more liberal policy, if you like. I don't know if that helps. I've lost you. I've lost you.
Yeah, no, great. Thank you.
Great. Now, I want to be respectful of people's time. Now, Roland, if you want to share your screen briefly to show them what you've been working on, because this will be shared as well. And then I want to say if anyone wants to continue this conversation, anyone who does want to stick around, I'll keep it open as long as you want to have that conversation. Okay, that's no problem, but there's no expectations. And there's also, I've not got any commitments from Nancy to stick around either. So it really will be an open conversation. And it's also if, it's you can get in touch with Nancy and sort of ask her the questions as well. She put her slides up, and so maybe I'll ask you as well at the end, Nancy, just to put up a slide with your contact details on as well. But and you can always contact me and ask for Nancy's details. And Nancy, hopefully it's okay that I pass them on, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. If people click on the LinkedIn profile, it's got my email address and my phone number on my LinkedIn profile. I'm very open about how to contact me.
Okay. Great.
I do love the drawings, by the way.
Yep.
Oh, how amazing to be able to do that whilst I'm talking.
Yeah, it is quite incredible. I would have liked to see the process live. Roland has recorded this, and so we'll do a sort of a stop frame animation sort of as he's gone along and do this to help capture this. And Roland, do you want to just say sort of a little bit what you do, just if you can do it in 1 or 2 minutes? Okay. He perhaps will come in when he's probably simultaneously scribbling.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you now, yes.
Oh, all right. Hello, everyone. So I'm Roland. I'm a campaigner as well. I just got a master in media campaigning and social change, and I'm an illustrator. So basically, I use storytelling and illustration to bring social change. So I do visual campaigns, educational comics to influence behaviors and stuff like that. So I'm glad to meet you all. Great,
thank you. And I can connect you with Roland if you want to also connect as well, because he has The MA he did was the one that, if you know, Michaela Anastasia at the University of Westminster, basically it's a campaigning master's. And there's lots of interesting, talented people in there, and Roland's, of course, one of those. So I'm going to say thank you to everyone and sort of have this formally end, but I will, as I said, keep this channel open for anyone who actually wants to have a sort of an open conversation. And Roland, if you can also stop sort of sharing your screen there, that way we can see each other. So thank you very much to Nancy for picking up this and taking on something which originally I talked with Antonia. We had initially this conversation way back last year in November, saying this important of how to prepare for the next government is going to be key. And so, and then originally it was, Antonia was supposed to be at the campaigning forum event in March and then had to cancel. And then we said, okay, you've already done the work, let's have this session. We planned it, and then the election was called, and then of course all of you joined because it was all of a sudden the most relevant issue there was. And then of course Antonia got selected to be an MP and could no longer sort of felt it was ethical to take this on. And of course I knew in the Campaigning Forum network we have some incredibly talented people, and I was thinking, who has been an MP or has run for an MP and has been involved on both sides of the equation? Of course Nancy came to mind first, but is not the only one for sure. So thank you very much for picking this up and running with it, Nancy.
It's been my pleasure. It's been really good fun, and I'd be very happy to do it again. I mean, it would be quite good fun to meet again after the first 100 days, wouldn't it? And just see whether this is working or not.
Absolutely, and we can plan that because yeah, it's something where sort of I'm starting to get my own act together and sort of plan stuff for the community to come together and keep talking about it. And I think it works well. So absolutely, lots of thumbs up for that, sort of all across the board.
Yeah, it's good to stick together.
Absolutely. So again, sort of, and thank you to Roland and to Andrew for being there as a little bit of backup and context in this as well. Sort of that always helpful. And then if anyone sort of wishes to then sort of, I'll say, now we're formally closed, but there's lots of you still here. So if you wish to actually start asking questions of each other, or Nancy, are you sticking around, or
I can stay for a little bit. Yeah, I'm really happy to stay for a little bit.
Okay, so we'll keep recording. And yeah, thank you everybody else for joining. Anyone else who wants to ask questions, sort of it's still open. And I think there's 25 new messages. Probably most of them say thank you very much. They do.
Oh, that's really kind. Thanks everybody. It's been such good fun.
Great. Any more questions coming up from people? Everyone, of course, has planned their day. They've got another Zoom call to jump into.
Yeah.
It's a modern the post-lockdown way.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's kind of convenient sometimes because you can pack more meetings into a day, but sometimes I miss the human contact.
Absolutely, I do. And that's why I love organizing the Campaigning Forum events, is because that face-to-face is so energizing. And also you have conversations you never would have thought you had even thought about that were useful to have. They're just really.
Well, I met Claire Corbett. He writes the Craftivism books at the ECF event one year in Oxford. This is pre-COVID.
Is that Sarah Corbett?
Sorry, Sarah Corbett. Yeah. And I've stayed in touch with her. Yeah, so that's kind of been a sort of an ongoing relationship. And I sponsored her book. So she just produced a new book, and she did it through Unbound. So it was like a crowdfund type thing.
Yeah.
And it's just amazing. The book is just amazing.
Great. Now I have Jason has a hand up, and I have Rebecca Walker-Wu who has a question on the chat. So I don't know who was first, but Jason, do you want to ask your question?
Yeah, hi. Thanks, Nancy. That was great. I guess I've got two questions, really. We work with a lot of organisations. I work for Crowdfunder. We work with a lot of organisations who are campaigning and using crowdfunding campaign to help drive their campaigning efforts. We've just seen we've got a big campaign fronted by Chris Packham around cleaning up Wake Lake Windmere. So, any thoughts on how and when to engage MPs in your crowdfunding campaign to help drive that, maybe? Yeah, we'll start with that one.
I mean, Crowdfunder have always said to me that the fundraising works best if you can get a video. So maybe if you could invite them to be in the video. I think it's really good to give busy MPs something that's really specific and time limited, so they can see, you know, and not keep asking them for more. So just saying to them, if you could just do this one thing for us, it would really help us out. And if they're willing to appear in the video and support your organisation, that might be one way they could help. I wasn't sure. Yeah.
And any thoughts on at Crowdfunder? We support hundreds of charities and organisations raising funds, and often we do that with match funding from partners. We've got Sport England are one of our partners to support sports clubs raising money. We're keen to engage other government departments in that process. What's the best way to do that? My approach has been through civil servants previously. Is it worth getting to know the MPs, new MPs, or is it best focusing on civil servants?
So you work for Crowdfunder, do you?
I do, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know why I'm hesitating is because I'm not sure what the rules under the Lobbying Act are around them supporting an organisation. Are you a not-for-profit? Are you a charity?
No, we're a social enterprise.
Yeah,
a business.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, I to be honest, before giving advice, I'd probably want to try and check what the rules are around them supporting organisations as civil servants. Don't know. It's quite a complex question, actually, Jason. You know, like if you actually want a relationship with government in terms of government sponsoring you mean, or supporting you publicly.
Well, to help us deliver more programmes on behalf of government. So with Sport England, we're contracted by Sport England to deliver a matched crowdfunding programme.
Oh, right, I've
so
got you.
Love to do that across more spheres, whether it's arts, whether it's community, whatever it might be, and help those organisations on the front line to crowdfund, get support from the communities, but also then some support from government.
Right, you could do it through the civil servants, or you could ask for a meeting with the minister where civil servants are present, because that would what the minister won't want is a meeting that is political, where it involves where money is going to go. So that's kind of what's going through my mind. So, but they can have a meeting with you, which is minuted by civil servants, so there's a record of it. So it's so if you like, the journey of the money is transparent. That's what they'll be looking to do. But I would go to each department that you want to match funds. You recently did one on small businesses or community pubs, because I supported one locally, didn't you? That cost of living type fund or something.
Yeah, we've done all sorts. Yeah,
it was like yeah, you pay £1 and actually there's £4 donated because it comes from a government pot. Civil servants, I would say, are the best one for that.
Okay. And timing wise, when's the best time to do that? Are they all frantically busy now? If we put anything in front of them now, are they going to read it, or?
I think I think the first couple of months are going to be really, really busy. It shouldn't necessarily stop you making an approach, but you might just find you have to do a follow-up because it might get lost in the noise. It depends what they're looking for. The bit that we don't know, the bit we don't have intel on, is what they've got ready behind the scenes that they haven't announced that they're hoping to do. But I would, yeah, I mean, I suppose I'd pick something that's in line with their agenda. You know, if they came out with a big campaign saying we want to make sure no more community pubs close, that gives you a really clear idea. So I would be listening to those announcements. Where are they looking to try and channel government money?
Okay.
Right. Thank you.
Super. Thank you, Jason, as well. So, Rebecca Walker-Wu, I was keen to hear the answer to Miriam's question. Does the Civil Service Yearbook provide more information than something like Dodds?
I don't know, because I don't use Dodds anymore. The last time I used it was many years ago, so I've got no idea what is on their platform. Each of these organisations, whether it's Dodds, de Havilland, I mean, those are kind of monitoring services. I don't know what intel they've got. You need to get them to do a presentation to you and like say what you want. But I found the Civil Service Yearbook is like for £150 pretty much gives me what I want. Just bear in mind, you know, I do that very targeted approach where I will look things up myself and do research myself rather than wade through the intel that is supplied through some of these platforms.
Okay, great. Rebecca says, thank you very much. Any other questions or sort of comments, either in the chat or if you want to ask them with
yeah, there's one about no surprises. I don't know if that person still on the call.
Oh, that's Martin. Yes. Okay. Can you talk
Right.
about no more surprises? What does this mean? What if your campaign changes track or has a new tactic to push?
Right.
So,
Yes, it's kind of the insider outsider thing again. So what it means is if you're having conversations, if you've moved to a point where you're having conversations with ministers about what you want and how they can deliver what you want, I wouldn't then go out and publish a press release which is criticising them without telling them first. I would have a quiet word first and say, hang on a minute, this is the discussion we're having. It looks like you're now taking this in a different tack. I wouldn't put that out there publicly. And I wouldn't go putting something out publicly that is completely different to something I'd already asked them, because they would say to me, hang on, I thought we had a relationship. Why didn't you tell me this was a problem before you went out to the press? So it's kind of, you sacrifice the media hit for the relationship. So that's what I mean by that. If your campaign changes track or has a new tactic to push, then again, you need to just think about that relationship. How would you feel if you had that relationship with somebody and you're going along this sort of policy program and you think everybody's happy, if something else then comes out of left field and you're going to be sat there going, well, hang on a minute, I thought we had something good going here and now you said this.
and Martin, you've got your hand up. Do you want to sort of ask any follow-on for that, or is that sort of more of just sort of saying that's your question?
Well, no, that thank you very much, Nancy. That was useful. As I had a career in the media, I always wanted to get the media hit. That's why I liked your comment about getting 2 interviews at the BBC. I thought that was very clever. But no, you've answered it. I mean, it does sort of presuppose that you have this very good dialogue with a minister or an official, I suppose, that you can sort of say, oh, our group is thinking of coming up with this, you know, what do you think about that? And I don't suppose every campaigner has got that in just yet, but I take your point. And if I get a chance to ask another question, I don't want to stop anyone else, but I was wondering what role having a celebrity in your campaign plays. I think a previous speaker just mentioned having Chris Packham on the Lake Windermere campaign, and I don't know whether that I don't know, maybe it's good publicity, but maybe it, I don't know, could irritate ministers by be seen to be a sort of quick way to grab some publicity, and they get overawed by the celebrity. I don't know, but I'd love to get your view.
Yeah, I mean, we've used, it doesn't hurt to have a bit of celebrity stardust now and again, does it? I think as long as they're not somebody who's been openly critical of the very person you're trying to influence, then basically it's just a little bit of stardust, isn't it, for your campaign, which is quite a nice thing to have, really. I mean, lots of celebrities are getting involved in political campaigns now, probably more than used to. Certainly, if I was running a campaign on poverty, I'd be trying to get Marcus Rashford back to do a little bit more because he was very effective.
Yes, absolutely. So we have a question here from Harry Ridgewell. I was wondering what other sort of easy stuff you can ask new MPs to do besides writing or giving oral questions or submitting EDMs. And once you have already got them to do this and maybe write to the minister and host a parliamentary debate, if there are any other parliamentary tactics, ask them to do, or if it's okay to just recycle, basically repeat the same things.
Yeah, I mean, they've all got limited time. I mean, you can look at the full range of things like having an all-party group. I would try and give them a little bit of publicity back. I think, if they're writing letters and they've put an EDM up, then if I'm going to do an event in Parliament, I would ask that MP to come along and speak, so they get something back for it. They're getting some acknowledgement of the efforts they've put in. It is sometimes just doing the same thing and getting people, the same faces out, and certainly on fuel poverty. There's a peer that Prem Seeker that consistently came out and supported fuel poverty action with actions in the street and so on. And there'll be, you know, certain MPs, Becky Long Bailey, John McDonnell, that will always actually come out into the streets to physically be seen and support people. You know, some people like doing that kind of thing as well, so that's always good. Nice to have that sort of photo of.
Great. Okay. Are there any more questions? We're sort of slowly sort of losing people as they go off to their other meetings and have lunch and whatever else. Any other questions?
You and me against the world soon, Dwayne.
What's that?
I said it'll be you and me against the world soon.
It will be. It will be. That's what it
Maybe
feels like
down.
some days anyway.